good to be back, everybody. Okay, and just before we start, you may be thinking, hey, this is a cool looking shirt. And yes, it is a pretty cool looking shirt. In case you're wondering how I got this, I actually got this as a gift when I actually made several donations to aid in the creation of this. Steam Locos in Profile in the USA by Chris Eden Green. You know, the creator and host of Steam Locos in Profile. If you haven't checked him out, please do so. There's a link to his channel in the description below, as well as a link to his online store, egmedia.co.uk/shop, where you can actually purchase this DVD. This video, by the way, not sponsored. But I do feel like I have to give the guy a big shout out because here's the thing when it comes to my copy of the DVD. There's nothing wrong with it. At least I don't think there's anything wrong with it because I haven't really played it. Because here's the thing. It was actually meant to arrive in a big gift box, which it did, but the box was supposed to arrive roughly in time for Christmas of 2022. But that didn't happen in my case. Sadly, my gift box ended up being delayed, which was actually pretty gutting and quite disappointing at the time. So I reached out to Chris, and luckily he offered a solution. Rather, he also went straight to. He went straight to a different solution by just sending me a link to digital downloads of the 10 episodes that he actually made for the DVD, which include the J&L Porters, the Mount Washington Cog locomotives. Let me just redo that from the top, just to make sure that you get everything clearly. The J&L Porters, the Mount Washington Cog locomotives, the Maine Forneys, the Rio Grande Mikados, the classic American 440s, the Chesapeake and Ohio H6s, the Reading T1s, the Shays, the various classes of Berkshires that were preserved, and of course the main event, the Union Pacific Big Boys. But yeah, I got all 10 episodes as digital downloads, but also I actually got a big file with all the music that Chris has actually made for the show over the years, which is actually quite cool. But where's the DVD can be purchased on his shop, and you also have the option of purchasing the episodes separately as digital downloads. No such option for the music. The reason why I say this in particular is because I actually asked Chris if I could have permission to use a particular bit of music from the show. I asked him very politely, and I also said that if I'm not allowed, I completely understand it because, the music isn't available publicly. But I did say that if I was given permission to use it, that I will state that the music isn't available publicly. Only people who actually made a financial contribution to Steam Locos in Profile, a large enough financial contribution in one go, like to a certain tier, they could actually have digital copies of the music that they can listen to anytime they want to. But I thought, maybe it would still be helpful if I at least asked the man himself if I could use the music for some of the videos that I wanted to do. But he said, sure, no problem. Since you asked so nicely, there's absolutely no issue with that. So yeah, I'm actually allowed to use one of the Steam Locos in Profile soundtracks. So, Chris, thank you very much. And with that out of the way, let's actually get into the subject matter for this episode. Yeah, welcome to Loco Profiling Episode 11. London, Midland, and Scottish, number 6100. Royal Scot. And I'm doing this one as a delayed birthday gift to my good friend Andrew, aka Overpowered Steam Productions. So, happy birthday, buddy. But, maybe it would have been better if I was doing this episode in the pouring rain, or after I've just taken a shower, or while I'm being drenched in champagne like a Formula 1 driver on the podium. Because Andrew said in one of his most recent videos that most things in life are better when you do them wet. Hell yeah.
Built in 1927, Locomotive 6100 was built to satisfy the LMS's hunger for actually good passenger locomotives. After going back and forth between building new compound 440s, Moguls, and Pacifics based on some of their own pre-grouping designs, and failing to obtain a bunch of the new Great Western Castle-class 10-wheelers, Henry Fowler had his senior draftsman, Herbert Chambers, build a 3-cylinder 10-wheeler capable of similar performance to the GWR's Castles. Safe to say, he succeeded, and of course the new locomotive spawned a whole class to be known as Royal Scots, named after an express passenger train between London, Euston, and Glasgow that they were intended to pull. In rapid time, the class totaled 70 locomotives, numbered 6100 through 6169, with 6100 being named Royal Scot herself. They were built across 2 batches, with the first 50 locomotives being built in 1927, but bought by the LMS as they were built by the North British Locomotive Company in Glasgow, and the remaining 20 being built a little later in 1930 by the LMS themselves at the old Midland Railway Locomotive Works in Derby. And as for the previously mentioned bit about similar power compared to the Castles, the Royal Scots actually exceeded them, with a tractive effort of 33,150 pounds, compared to the Castles generating 31,625 pounds. Very impressive when you remember that the Royal Scots only had 3 cylinders, whereas the Castles had 4 of them. Excuse me. The publicity for 6100, as well as her class and service, were ambitious too, as in 1933 the LMS chose to send a Royal Scot over to the United States for the Chicago World's Fair that year, with the locomotive remaining there, making a big real tour across the US and Canada for the following 6 months, traveling over 11,000 miles without any major problems. Although it looked like the LMS chose Royal Scot herself, number 6100, she actually stayed in the United Kingdom hauling the Royal Scots service at the time. The locomotive that was sent overseas was classmate 6152, the King's Dragoon Guardsman, having been renumbered and renamed as the prototype as part of an identity swap. This seemed to have sparked a conspiracy theory, as there's a long-standing belief that when the engine returned from the States and Canada, the identity swap remained permanent. However, after encountering several problems with the class, and the old Midland boilers reaching the end of their lifespans, 6100 and the other 69 Royal Scots were taken to the Derby Works and rebuilt between 1943 and 55 into a modified design by Fowler's successor, William Stanier. This rendered the original Fowler and Chambers design, that continued the heritage of the Midland Railway, extinct, in favor of Stanier's design practices, which looked like a modified and improved version of the stuff that he'd learned on the Great Western Railway while studying under George Jackson Churchward. But the rebuilt Scots were an even greater force to be reckoned with, becoming among the best of the best for British Express steam engines, with engineman Piccolo Pete Johnson in particular describing them as incomparable, second only to Stanier's larger Princess Royal Pacifics. For 6100, the one from the US and Canada tour, this rebuild happened in June of 1950, in the early years of British Railways. The whole class would inevitably be retired from service between 1962 and 66, with Royal Scot, by this time having been renumbered as 4 6100 in the late 40s or early 50s thanks to BR, being one of the first ones to go. Fortunately, she was bought for preservation by Sir Billy Butlin, as he put the locomotive on display at one of his holiday camps in Skegness, after gaining her LMS number 6100 back. She was then transferred in 1971 to Bressingham Steam Museum in Norfolk for the next 30-plus years. She returned to steam in March of 2009 following a lengthy overhaul, and she looked striking, being painted red, specifically the same LMS Crimson Lake livery that she actually had while on display in Skegness. However, it was revealed that the overhaul was a bit of a botch job, as tragically, she didn't receive the proper repairs she actually needed. The issues that 6100 had at the time ranged from the driving wheels running out of alignment to a rumor that some of the pipework was made of household plumbing, offbeat valve timing, being pressed into service before the paint was even finished, as is evident by the epic lack of LMS logos on the sides of the tender at one point. And the biggest bombshell of all, catching fire on the back of a low-loader truck. Before you ask, she was hauled by a truck at the time to go from railway to railway, as she wasn't certified for main line running yet. Despite the epic livery, 6100 only lasted a few weekends in steam before being retired again to get the proper repairs, which saw her out of traffic until September of 2015, with all the mechanical issues from the previous overhaul fixed at the cost of a new cosmetic issue, being repainted into the #1 worst livery for LMS steam locomotives. British Railways Brunswick Green. This last part is a particularly big buzzkill for me, because personally when I think of the LMS, I always tend to think of red locomotives for express passenger services and black for everything else. If you look at the circle, which actually represents the color spectrum, green is the exact opposite of red. And to make matters worse, 6100 was one of only 2 Royal Scot locomotives to be secured for preservation, and her surviving classmate, locomotive 6115, Scots Guardsman, was initially repainted to a very prestigious variant of LMS Black with cream and maroon lining, but she was also repainted into BR Green. I know I might sound like an armchair at this point, but hear me out. What if 6115 could be repainted back into that LMS Black livery? I ask this because she got the Stanier rebuild treatment in LMS days, so the livery can be historically authentic, even if it was as late as August of 1947. And maybe, just maybe, build a couple of full-size Royal Scot replicas in the original Midland-inspired Fowler and Chambers design, with the engines chosen for resurrection being 6152, the King's Dragoon Guardsman in LMS Red, and 6113, Cameronian in an experimental LMS Blue, based on the black livery seen on 6115. The reason why I chose these particular two is that 6152 can be made to sort of settle the debate as to which engine the preserved Royal Scot actually is, and 6113 was actually used on April the 27th of 1928 for the first non-stop run of the Royal Scots service. 3 days before the LMER tried the same with locomotive 4472 Flying Scotsman on its namesake service from London King's Cross to Edinburgh. Admittedly, the LMS trains had to stop at Carlisle for a crew change because the LMS had no corridor tenders to do a crew change on the move. But still, it did give 6113 a slight bit of fame that is often overlooked. Now, yes, you may have noticed that when it comes to all the pictures of the Royal Scots in the original design, you know, the Midland-inspired Fowler and Chambers design, when it comes to the actual color pictures, those were all just miniatures. So in case you're wondering about the full-size locomotives, well, here's an epic, out-of-context answer from Chris Eden Green himself.
It was a bit bigger than this, though, to be clear.